If you do an MCP and you give your local machine full access to an MCP, it can actually run under your context as the admin of your machine and do all kinds of crazy stuff. Why would I ever want to use an MCP? Like, it seems very risky.
This episode is brought to you by Nebraska.Code 2025. Tickets are selling fast, so get yours today for a great event July 23rd to July 25th. Welcome to the next episode of Engineer in the Loop, the podcast for professionals working with models in the mix. How's it going, Brian?
Well, I need AI to answer for me, because AI would say something like, I'm just humming along nicely. It's going great. Answers, it's going great. We've had youth sports every night since, I don't know, February. So I think I'm just ready to, sit down and just learn AI and just be at the computer with nobody talking to me.
That's a good segue into learning AI. What are you planning to do that, Brian?
Well, I mean, I've already started, so let me just kind of give you a 50,000-foot journey. Obviously, my first experience with AI was a few years ago, but it was that cloud workshop with the license plates using computer vision. So what I've come to find, obviously the AI 900 exam is a really good overview. That was a really good way to get an introduction to AI and kind of all the different services. But really, there's a lot of stuff with AI, right? You've got vision, you've got speech, you've got text, you've got translation, you've got translation of audio, translation of text. And it's like, where does all this stuff fit in? What do I need to know? What do I really need to know? And then on top of that, you've got, well, I'm a developer and I don't want to get left behind. So what the hell are these agents things? And what the heck are these agent things? And, how do I use them? And why am I not getting my code written for me, magically, automatically, like everybody else seems to be doing? Because all I see on social media is, I built this entire site in 37 seconds and it's amazing. And I don't ever need an engineer ever again in my life. So what am I doing? Well, I've tried Cursor, I've tried GitHub Copilot, I've tried Azure stuff, and really, really like the API interactions with Azure. I really think that's quite fun, and you can build your own chatbots, you can build your own ChatGPT. But we were talking offline before this. So we were talking about Cursor. We were talking about how you use Cursor, and I've used it and ran out of tokens and didn't want to pay for it. And it's a good tool, right? It does what it's supposed to do as long as you give it some good guidelines, just like any AI. But what would you think it would take? I think a good way to learn AI is to build something. So maybe the next step is to do something like build your own Cursor. What do you think that would look like?
I don't know how far Visual Studio Code's open source extensions are, or open sourceness is, because essentially all you would need to do is the chatbot piece is really easy. And by that I mean you just need to figure out how to basically make API calls out to your OpenAI, whatever your AI instance is, right? It could be OpenAI, it could be Azure, it could be AWS, it could be whatever. Doesn't really matter. That wouldn't be super hard. And then it would be, how do you give it context into your file? So with Cursor, you can highlight the terminal and it knows that you highlighted this line through that line. That'd be a little bit more tricky. Feeding in the lines of code, giving it context into your file, that'd be also a little bit harder behind the scenes. But I assume to a certain extent, it's more or less kind of like a raw string that's being fed in prior of here's the file I'm looking at. It's going to get harder. All that to be said, I don't think it's horrendously difficult, right? You just have a chat interface that's making API calls. The real problem or the heaviness of it is going to be writing a system prompt so it knows that hey, I'm an AI agent. I'm here to help somebody code. And then passing around the data of how do you get your code in there. A lot of the AI tools too now have enough context windows that you don't necessarily have to say, this is the exact file I want you to look at. It's smart enough to start crawling through your project.
Okay.
I think tree traversal to get to the file that you care about would be difficult, because you're going to have mini calls there of how do I find where the thing is that you're asking me about?
Right.
But you go back, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was say, if you go back to the earlier implementations of Cursor and GitHub Copilot, where you had to say, look at this file exactly, and here's the question I have, that's not hard. That's just, you're basically giving it the file as a string and then asking it a question about it. You could build that. I don't think it's horrendously difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So, couple things here then. So I have a bunch of organizational standards I want to follow. Will I need to train my AI on that? That's question number one.
Okay.
Question number two is the obvious one that everybody's going to ask. Well, if I say, yes, AI, go ahead and, what do we want to call this? Snake through my code? Basically give it access. I envision the evil computer visions from the 1980s and 90s in the movies where the Terminator, like the system takes over and says, no, you can't do this anymore because it's wrong. But more than that, what I really care about here is if I give AI this access to my code base, one of our friends, Spencer, says, no matter what you do with OpenAI, you can't keep it secret, right? So how do I guarantee I don't keep AI finally got into my code, and most of us don't do stuff that's earth-shattering and proprietary enough that it would probably be a problem. But like if you were, or if you had something that was like organizationally locked down, how do you absolutely guarantee that nobody else is seeing that code ever again but you and your AI agent?
Sure. So I think there's a few questions there. To start off with the, I'm blanking on the first one now. Getting Cursor to work. I don't remember what your first question was. So I'll start with the second. Like getting it to work so it's 100% locked down. If we're talking building our own example, like Azure has an Llama, a bunch of these models have a way to run this on your own hardware. AI Foundry Local is a new thing since build. Llama Studio has a way to run LLMs locally. They all run the OpenAI spec, so the OpenAI API spec. And then you can put it on a private network. You can disconnect it from the internet, or the internet. So it could just run on your intranet if you're really that concerned about it. The argument of nothing is ever truly afraid or kept out of OpenAI, that one's interesting because there is a lot of SLAs and agreements about like if you pay for Cursor, you can turn privacy settings on so your stuff will never get in there. Same with ChatGPT, right? Like if you get an enterprise license, you can tell them that like, hey, I don't want any of my data going into there. There has to be a different path from those companies. Like you using Meta's AI is totally going back into Meta's training database, right? Because you're using the product, you are the product, you're not paying for it.
Right.
If you need to be 100% no nothing, you can deploy a model on-prem or on machine and not give it any access to the internet. That would be number one. Number two,
I'd
say
like an old white room like we used to have for like network isolation back in the day.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Run it on a VNet or a private net and then just don't give it access to the internet. And once you get it up and going, I mean, a lot of those you can run and, get the runtime on a thumb drive or something, plug it in, like your system never connects to the internet.
So you're telling me I can run a model from a thumb drive on a private hardware and basically build something like ChatGPT against it?
Yeah, not ChatGPT itself, but you could use like an Llama model of some sort, depending on what kind of hardware.
I'm sorry, maybe as a layperson, when I say ChatGPT, I think of question and answer, right?
Yeah, 100%. You can do that with
generating code, not necessarily generating images even, but just like I want a C# method that adds two numbers. Boom, it gives it to me. I want a C# method that correctly uses a functional approach to add those two numbers rather than a regular method, right? So it translates to a function. The little things like that you can do that make you a much more powerful developer, but against my own code base. So like, okay, so I've got this insurance underwriting algorithm and I'd like to be able to run what I call ChatGPT, or basically code generation, code helpers, code agents, whatever you want to call them, to help me enhance it. But I don't want that proprietary logic to get out into the wild. I could run that from a hardware on my own network. What would that look like?
So AI Foundry Local just exposes like a localhost endpoint. So in the same way that you would have had to route, running something on a server rack back in the day, then you just make API calls out to that like you would anything else. And the model is enclosed enough that it can, you're making your API call the same way Microsoft does for you or whatever provider does for you to their AI agent. Okay. The response comes back and then you just read it and keep going.
Do I have to host this? Like, do I have to set it up? Do I go into like a Foundry portal page just like I do in Azure and set up projects? What does it look like?
Yeah, sorry. AI Foundry Local is a CLI tool. So you get a command line interface, whether it's an executable. It runs on Mac and Linux as well. So whatever your server is, you just run that executable and it sets up an HTTP port that you then, if you're hosting it on your own stuff, would have to deal with routing and networking and all that. But theoretically at that point, it's just once the model's down, you could pass it around, do whatever, run it locally, cut the box off from the internet, do whatever you need to do, but it should be there and running.
Okay. So say that I don't have the capabilities of doing this. I'm just thinking, could I set up a private network in Amazon or in Azure that basically isolates my stuff, give myself a VPN connection to it, and then run it from the cloud, but still have it be private? because it feels like I can.
Yeah,
Just
I
run
don't
it
see
from a
what you
VM out in
couldn't.
the cloud or something.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on what kind of powerful, like how many cores should I have? How much memory should I have? Like, does it matter? Can I do this on like a 2-core machine, or 8 gigs of RAM, or do I need like 32 gigs of RAM and 16 megs or 16 megs of memory? How old am I? Oh, it was amazing back in 1994. Sorry.
We landed the moon with less.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you believe
The
that.
It's just so model specific. It's so hard because like a Phi 3 or a Phi mini model, Microsoft's Phi series, they've run on smartphones, so just
Okay.
smartphone hardware.
What? Go ahead.
It's really hard to say. It just depends on what model you're running and how hard you're going to be pushing it.
Okay. So sure, it depends, right? Everything depends. Okay. So here's the next thing then. What the hell is Phi 3? GPT? Like the only thing I know is GPT. Like that's not true, but I'm pretending. Like let's say I only know GPT is like I'm just gonna use GPT 4.0 for everything because that's the only thing I trust. Like when would I say, well, no, you know what, Phi 3 or Llama or what's the other one?
Gemini,
Claude,
Claude.
Gemini, right? Yeah, those ones, right? How do I pick? Like, how do I know? Or can I just say deploy all these and you pick? Yeah.
So, some companies are getting there. I believe ChatGPT now will pick the one it thinks is best. If not, it's on their roadmap. Cursor AI, like the IDE, will use the best agent it thinks for the task at hand, and it balances between a fast response and like a more thoughtful response. GitHub Copilot today, you can pick different ones. So if it doesn't auto pick, I would say trial and error is the best way to go.
Okay.
One thing we've seen personally is we use GPT 4.0 Mini just because it was the cheapest model for like apps we were building. And then we figured out what shortcomings and what issues were there and which models better suited the use case we were doing. For example, we now use 4.1 Mini for an app we're using because it's very dependent on following the system instructions and the system prompting. So when you build a model or an agent or whatever, you can kind of give it an introductory call or introductory information, which is called a system prompt. It's basically context setting to say like, hey, you're a model, here's what your goal is, here's what I want you to do, here's an achievable outcome. Maybe you even have examples and stuff in there. That way it knows how to respond back, what you're looking for out of it. And then you can ask it a question. 4.1 was more trained to follow instructions better. So knowing that just by keeping up on research papers, there's unfortunately, I don't think, a lot of great information to say when to jump where. I would say cost is going to be your biggest factor, and then accuracy. So
if I'm running it on my own machine, though, cost is not a factor.
So GPTs cannot run on your own machine.
Why?
Just not one of the packageable ones.
Okay, so
Too proprietary.
So like GPT 4.0, GPT 4.1 Mini, though you can't run those yourself. Okay, but you can run something like Phi or Llama or Claude and get the same.
Yeah, and there's
result.
a ton of Hugging Face models too that you can run locally. And at that point, you would want to pick the model that is best adapted for your use case. So Microsoft did AI Foundry has a lot of filters, so you can filter based on like if you're trying to do an inference task, if you're trying to do a video recognition task, if you're trying to do a, like whatever kind of task you're doing.
Sure.
Help you figure out what model you should be using. And then all of those are fine-tuned or sometimes even custom trained on that particular task. Okay. So like a model that is good at detecting faces is obviously not going to be as good at inferencing, if at all. Maybe it can't even inference.
Why does a model need to specialize like that? Why can't they just do it all? Like, why does this model works better to do face recognition, this one does speech recognition, this one does, I don't know, text recognition, optical character recognition. Why can't one model just do it all?
It's in the same way as like anything in the world, right? Like if you specialize, you become better at it, you're quicker. The hardware to train, it's harder to train a generalized model to do everything. Because it needs to do everything. You need to train more. It's going to cost more. It's harder to evaluate the output of if it's doing it well or not because your breadth is so much larger. So you just need more.
My boss wants me to do everything. Sorry.
But you won't, right? Like in reality, it's the same as like people want a car to do everything. Like you're not going to get a car that can fly and drive. There's always concessions and, pros and cons to everything. And that's kind of what you got to pick right now just because these generalized models are good at doing a lot of stuff. But
so I can get to England by plane or by boat, but the plane is going to be faster and probably cost about the same in the long run.
Yeah, and it's more specialized for that task, right?
Right.
Your goal is to get there quicker.
Yeah. Okay. So every time someone says Hugging Face, I want to punch them in the face because I feel like people just say Hugging Face all the time. Like Hugging Face, and no, like it's just implied that you would know what Hugging Face is.
Yeah, Hugging Face is like a what's the word I'm looking for? Container registry, but for LLMs.
Okay, so it's like Docker Hub.
Yes.
Okay, so Hugging Face is not a company that just puts out all these models and everybody. It's not like Sam Altman's OpenAI. It's just Hugging Face is just Docker Hub, and I go get my models from there that other people have built. Okay, see that clears up a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if Hugging Face has their own first-party models. I'll be honest, I'm not super in-depth with a lot of what they do there, but there is a lot of like, Brian, if you want to share your specialized model with the world, you can post it there and other people can pull it down and like, give you upvotes like NPM or like the Docker registry or whatever. That's kind of the avenue people go to share open source models.
So now you can go get an insecure LLM that someone else built and steals and exfiltrates all your information. Awesome.
Yeah, that is a possibility.
It may be a better coder.
And that's where like some of the Hugging Face stuff, it's the same with NPM, right? Like you could go pull a package, or hell, even the Linux kernel almost had a super huge vulnerability because somebody committed a backdoor into the kernel. Like, unfortunately, that's a risk of open source. You just hope that if enough eyes are on it or enough people are using it, that it's not something that people would have noticed.
Sure.
You can also, like I said, with Hugging Face stuff, run it on your own machine, lock it down, monitor traffic, be like, oh, hey, I see you're trying to reach out. You shouldn't be doing that. I'm not going to use this model anymore, and downvote it or report it or whatever.
Yeah. So you're reminding me of something else I read last week as part of my AI learning journey. So obviously the big buzz is MCPs, Model Context Protocol. And someone was writing about this, and I found it fascinating because, people are saying MCP is just the next HTML. It's just HTML for models, right? This is how they can communicate. This person was writing and making the argument that that's like a really bad statement, because essentially when you make a call to a web API, you're executing under the context of your user or whatever, but on their servers. If you do an MCP and you give your local machine full access to an MCP, it can actually run under your context as the admin of your machine and do all kinds of crazy stuff. Why would I ever want to use an MCP? Like, it seems very risky.
So Microsoft, I believe, recently put out or is working on, I think it was in the book of news, I could be wrong, but there is now Entra ID capabilities for MCP servers that they're building out. So you can do normal authorization attributes, so you can identify who is actually calling your MCP.
Yeah.
So that you can't have that exact issue happen.
Okay, but I'm talking about running it from the context of my machine as my admin user on the machine with full authority over my computer that the MCP is now running on. Like, or this code I'm running against this MCP, and I brought in this MCP that somebody else wrote or whatever. Like, maybe I'm not understanding because, again, I'm still learning, but it seemed to me like it was a way that this machine could essentially be hijacked by the author of the MCP to do things like exfiltrate your passwords and any kind of like authorization keys or tokens you're sending places.
Yeah, I think if you would call into an MCP, you'd have to like connect to it and you'd be running it on their system, not...
Okay.
Like,
so
you wouldn't run
to an API, I'm making a call somewhere else. It's not running on my machine.
Correct.
Under my context of authority.
Unless you're building your own MCP, and then at that point it's just like an API, right? Like your .NET runner is running on your machine. Probably you can set it up so it uses your identity, like in Visual Studio. But once you deploy it out, it's not tied to you anymore, right? It's going to have authorization parameters, and you can do stuff like that.
Okay. So let's say I do decide to build my own cursor. We're going to just go with cursor because I think that's the one that's winning the most popularity race right now, even though I think the GitHub Copilot agents that they released during build are pretty cool. But let's say I decide to build that. I also see like, okay, now we've got the Azure MCP and we've got the blah, blah, blah MCP. Why do I want to use those? Like what's the gain? What do I benefit from using an MCP? So
in VS Code, I don't know if you can do this in Cursor yet or not, so I might be misspeaking, but in VS Code explicitly, you can connect it to MCPs. So if you have an MCP server, you can register it, and then your agent, when you ask it questions, can go make calls out to that MCP on your behalf.
Okay.
So for example, let's say like my company has a Git widgets API. I could give it my MCP and say, hey, like, what widget's at index 5? And if I have an endpoint already defined or a method that's called like get widget by index, my MCP could go out and actually make that REST call on my behalf, get it, come back, and just tell me what it is. So that's why you would do that, because then your agents could then, do more operations on your behalf, typically with API endpoints that your company probably already has today.
So basically what you're saying is, and this is kind of what I'm understanding from it, and you can correct me where I'm wrong. We've taken the ability to where we used to have to basically make the decision on our side, and we're giving it to the model as a chance to say, hey, I've detected that you're looking for this now. And then rather than us having hard-coded, go get, make a call to this API endpoint, it has authority to make a call to that endpoint, and it knows through some logic that's the endpoint I want versus the other endpoint it also has access to, and it determines then the if statement becomes implicit to the model, not to our code, not explicit in our code. Like I don't have to say if you send me go get the widgets, go to this endpoint. But if you send me go get the other widgets, go to this endpoint, right? I say go get me something that looks like a widget. And it says, oh, you're looking for this type of widget, and it goes to the right endpoint. So it's really just making logical decisions better and still having the authority to complete the call that we would have ordinarily just hard-coded.
I went to a user group on, I think it was Wednesday, and it was the printing press they talked about was great. The Industrial Revolution was great because it offloaded mechanical work that previously had to be done to people by machines.
Okay.
An LLM, if you think about it in the way you just described it, it's the first time we are getting the ability to offload cognitive skill to a machine.
Okay.
So to your point of, I'm going to have to, and it's a basic example, right? But just go with me on it. Instead of you having to sit down and go, well, sometimes they're going to want widget A, sometimes they're going to want widget B. Here's my if statement. It's no, the LLM has access to both. They'll just figure it out. Like I just want to get widget call, and it'll know based on the context and based on whatever I feed it that it just knows which one to bring me.
Sure.
And then you take a lot of those simple cases, right? Continue to build them out. And now you have an MCP that could, maybe do your whole inventory system for widgets.
Okay. So if I have this proprietary thing, let's say that I am an insurance company. I like insurance companies because I have worked for them in the past and they make sense to me. And I have underwriting functionality and I have costing functionality and risk analysis and all these different pieces that I have to do. I've got a person on my team that says I am the underwriter. No model in the world will ever be able to make the decisions I make, right? Because I know that if I approve this policy, we're going to lose $10,000. And the model will approve it because the risk looks good, but my gut tells me, I've seen this before and it's going to fail. The model can't figure that out. Like maybe what I'm talking about is a singularity, but I guess what I'm really going for here in the long run is when do you see an ability for reasoning to the point of humans trust AI that it's actually reasoning well? Because if it's going to reason and make decision to make call to A or B, then I have to trust that it's going to make the right call, right?
Yeah.
But now if we're talking about risking lives or money or whatever it might be based on the reasoning of the model, all of a sudden the human steps in and says, no, I don't trust you. Like, do you see a point where we can be like, that's just a stupid thing that we didn't believe could happen and it's easily accomplished now? Or do you think that that's something that's still far off?
Do you use cruise control in your car, Brian?
I do, but I hate it.
Do you trust it?
I do.
I mean, I think it's going to be something similar to that, right? Like you're going to have people that be like, oh, this stupid feature that nobody likes, blah, blah, blah. And now like the vast majority of people use it. I think it's going to be an adoption curve. It's the same people like, don't trust everything you read on the internet. And now just like everybody trusts everything they read on the internet. Like,
yeah,
I think it'll be an adoption. The people who don't trust it will either be, unfortunately, probably replaced. Or maybe they are operating at such a level that today, where we are with AI, we don't want to replace them or try to like augment them. I bet if you have an underwriter that's writing that one policy that's multi-millions of dollars, that's probably like one of the like 300 things they're doing.
Right.
Maybe they keep that and all the other like 299 policies that are, very low risk, very copy and paste, rinse and repeat. That's what the AI does.
Okay. So now you're talking about a whole different shift of thinking that makes a lot of sense and nobody's going to argue with. Okay, you're going to take away the ones that are dumb and boring and still let me do the interesting ones.
And you have more time to be more prepared for the interesting ones.
Yeah.
Instead
you're
of,
not worn down and angry.
yeah, instead of, "Oh, I just know it's going to be this way because," I'm like, well, we'll get some research. Tell me why. Like, is your gut really right?
Yeah.
Because maybe 9 times out of 10, it's wrong. But that one time you were right and you've just been hanging on to that forever.
Yeah, because you won. I mean, you saved the company $10 million or something one time.
Yeah.
But cost them $90 million in rejections that they don't ever really keep track of.
And
Right?
well, and you can start asking higher questions than that, right? Now you got time to do other things.
Yeah.
Is my gut really right? Let me go look back and see.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that people let AI do the dumb, toil, boring stuff so you can continue to do the creative and exciting stuff of your job.
Okay. So we're not trying to replace people. We're just trying to augment people in a way that lets them be even more effective at the thing they really want to do. So you can actually make the argument, actually, we're not going to take that control from you. We're going to give you more control over that piece by taking away stuff that you don't care about.
Correct.
Okay.
And hopefully
right,
increase
so-
everybody's job satisfaction too, right? Like,
Absolutely. I mean, I'd much rather go to work and do the things that are interesting than have to do the 9 things that I don't want to do before I get to the interesting thing. Absolutely. Like, review this policy. Oh, check the box. Oh, this is interesting. You know, let's look at this one that's interesting.
well, and even as developers too, I think of like, have you ever gotten the ticket to update your dependencies, Brian, and it breaks everything, and you spend 2 or 3 days just updating an NPM package?
No, I would never do that. I would just rewrite the whole system in a greenfield. I actually abandoned a project just recently that I've been working on because of stupid Angular updates. For that very reason, everything is refactored. I basically have to redo, and this is because, you know, again, I'm doing 60 things, and I'm not an expert in any of them, like we were talking about earlier, or more broad, not deep enough. But Angular, for those of you who are Angular developers, you already probably know this, but for those who aren't, they did something where now, I can't even remember, it's been a month and a half since I wrestled with this, but it's something about standalone components. And basically all my components were written as not standalone, and now they don't work. And there's some way to override it, but that doesn't work either. It's just a big mess. So yes, I've gotten the ticket to update my dependencies, and it broke everything.
And you just gave up.
I want AI to fix that for me. Maybe I should just buy Cursor, hook it up to my system, and see fix this.
I would try Claude 4.0 and see where you get to.
Okay. So here's my
GitHub Copilot.
I do like GitHub Copilot. The agent in code is great. The agent on the web is amazing. That's fun to just put in a user ticket and watch it write your code for you. All right. So back to that whole idea. I'm learning AI. I'm trying to get started. I've just heard these 2 dudes talking about this amazing new revolution of we're going to automate all the mundane and MCPs and the stuff like that. Like, how do I learn that? How do I get, where do I go? What do I do? Like, help.
I would say just start building at this point. Try to build your own. Chat with your data as a really solved solution. Find what pieces of that really resonate with you, and you can always build, you know, a more complex solution or a simpler solution. Are you interested in the indexing and chunking of the data? Are you interested in the fetching of it? Are you interested in the semantic ranking of it? Like, then you can totally just get off your leash and start running down some specific things, and you have a tangible thing to point at, and you can see how you're breaking things or making things better too. Right? Because then you just keep reincorporating that back into your retrieval augmented system. Hey, I changed my semantic ranker, now it's worse. Or, hey, I indexed data bad or better, now it's better or worse. All that kind of stuff I think is fun to do. I would start with that. You can do models that are serverless. You can also deploy a free AI search index. So AI search has a free tier. You can play with that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
If you really want to go local, and you want to learn how to like run your own server, AI Foundry Local is a thing. You can also have your own local index database too. But yeah, I'd say those are kind of the 2 paths. Decide, do you want to be tied to a cloud provider? Do you want to go local? The cloud will take some things away from you so you don't have to think about it, but you're going to pay a little bit for that in production. But yeah, I think just get started. Microsoft has a bunch of sample projects out there too.
Yeah. Of course, you know, maybe in the MCT trainer side of things, the AI 900 and the AI 102 have a lot of training material around them that's pretty free in Microsoft Learn. That's what I've been doing. And then some of the agent stuff that they did for these GitHub repos that they put out.
Global AI.
Frustration is the Python. I don't want to learn Python.
Ditto. All the samples are written in Python.
Yeah.
But I'll give a shout out too, because this might come out before they're over. AgentCon is a thing. Global
That's
AI.
Like next week.
Yeah. There's
Kansas
one
City?
in KC. There's a virtual one in North Carolina, I think.
Okay.
So just check out AgentCon. Global AI has all the different chapters. Some are virtual, some are in person. They're all free, I believe. So check that out if you want to learn more from people actually building with it.
Yeah. Or follow us. We'll probably be posting stuff we're learning along the way, making videos, talking about it, whatever.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll talk to everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.